Hey there, this is Brandon of Not Enough Podcast, and today we have a special guest, a friend of mine and another podcaster, Jack Pennington.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Jack. I'm not usually on this side of the table. I'm very, very strange right now. I'm totally out of my comfort zone right now. Can I just start interviewing you instead?
I think that's actually a good idea.
It's probably not my place. It's probably not appropriate because that's more my comfort zone is to be in charge of everything.
Right.
All right. Now you can talk. Now you can talk. Now. Go ahead. You go ahead. Now.
Thanks. So, Blade Runner. I've been thinking about this movie. We've talked about it a little bit.
Blade Runner.
Yeah, good movie.
Oh yeah. I finally saw the new one just a couple weeks ago.
Right.
It's been out for a year or something like that. Finally saw it like 2-3 weeks ago. Got really excited about it when I first saw the trailer for it. I saw that very first shot of the gun. There's like this crazy low-key chiaroscuro shot of just that gun. And I was like, I know what that's going to be. It's so awesome.
Nostalgia.
And me, like, as the only male in a room, because it was the Wonder Woman trailer screening, only guy in the room goes, it's a Blade Runner. And 600 women stared me down.
That is perfect.
You're excited for the wrong reasons, man. So I, totally freaked out over that. Blade Runner, like being a film geek, going to film school and all that stuff, like Blade Runner was constant conversation for us. We used to sit around and watch every different version of it, compare and contrast every single version of it. I mean, we got way into that movie and rented the new one with my girlfriend a couple weeks ago, and she was like, what is Blade Runner? And I was like, woman, we're breaking up. Okay, no, we'll just watch the old movie. She'd never seen Blade Runner. So I went on Google Movies, Google Play, rented Blade Runner, rented the wrong Blade Runner, didn't realize what I was renting, rented the original theatrical cut with the voiceover from Harrison Ford.
Bad.
Rented the absolute worst version of Blade Runner, made my girlfriend watch it, then we watched the new one. So I didn't introduce her properly to it, but who cares? It's not about her. I don't give a shit. She's never even seen Blade Runner. Fuck her. So all that matters is I've seen the new one now. Right. I'm up to date.
Okay.
That's all that matters.
Yes.
So, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Totally kind of turned the Blade Runner universe on its head for me.
Okay.
A little bit. If for nothing else, just the basic, like Deckard isn't a replicant now.
Right.
You know, like that's what I was dead certain.
Same.
Deckard was a replicant, and it's like they can't be now, right?
I mean, not the way that they were. No, not the way they were doing it. No, it's not even feasible.
Not really, right? And what really pissed me off is like Ryan Gosling shows up and he's a replicant,
right? And
he's a Blade Runner. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Then Deckard must have been a replicant because all the Blade Runners are replicant.
Right.
No, what the fuck? Why are you doing this to me? That's all that matters to me is that Deckard is a replicant, and now every argument I had in film school, I'm totally wrong on. You know,
man,
it was the worst.
Don't you hate when that happens?
Huh?
Don't you hate when that happens?
I hate when that happens.
Oh man,
what the fuck? But otherwise, yeah, pretty good flick. Really interesting, new perspective on the whole replicant question, right?
Right. I like that they kind of shifted away from this idea of like who deserves to like live like a certain amount of time, like kind of identity by way of like length of life or quality of life, into this like more identity by way of,
like the ability to carry life, the ability to recreate, create new life.
Exactly.
Yeah, there was always this big question in the first one of like who deserves life, right? Like once you give someone life, do you get to determine how much life they get? Or once they've once they have their own life, do they get to make their own choices about life?
Right.
I mean, that's the whole movie can be summed up in that one line that the blonde motherfucker says in the guy's bedroom. I can't remember the actor's name now, but he's like, I want more life, fucker. That's the whole theme of the whole thing, right? It's like once you've given someone life, you don't get to make any choices for them anymore, you know? And if someone can create their own life as well, if this woman can actually birth a child, you know, that makes her, how human does that make her? Just because we created this human life, does that make us in charge of that human life? You know? it's really like no one really gets into the question of AI the way Blade Runner does. No one has ever really, like, everyone wants to make that question, talk about that question when they're talking about artificial intelligence. Everyone wants to be like, oh, once you've created life, what's the implications of the ethics or whatever? But Blade Runner really like puts a fine point on it for me, you know?
Yeah, I think, I feel like the idea of kind of, oh man, always. So the idea of creating
An artificial life, or
creating an artificial life is always, it's always like been of interest to me, and I always like I love all the stories that are related to that.
Yeah.
So like anything by Philip K. Dick.
Oh yeah.
He just like he's him and Isaac Asimov. I really love both the way that they handle the idea of artificial intelligence. It fascinates me.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know, as the progenitors of that kind of idea, what they first said about it kind of defines everything else going forward, has defined it. And
yeah,
I don't know. How do you think that the kind of the idea, just to cross-reference Isaac Asimov and Philip K. Dick's works, the robot laws,
right,
by Asimov versus kind of the way that Philip K. Dick talks about it, or at least the film representations of Philip K. Dick's work talk about it.
The problem comparing Isaac Asimov and Philip K. Dick is, first of all, Isaac Asimov was a computer scientist. Okay. He was a genius. Like, he was a legit genius. He actually understood how robots and shit worked. Philip K. Dick was a crazy drug addict with a great imagination. I love Philip K. Dick. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of all of his work, but does not understand robotics whatsoever. So it's interesting to see Asimov puts together the rules of robotics and artificial intelligence, but does not, the robots in Isaac Asimov's world are not human. You know, they're computers. And it's really clear in iRobot that the robot characters don't really have morals. They don't make their own decisions, you know, until even when they get really, really late in that book and the robots are almost perfectly human.
Right.
It's still pretty clear to me that Isaac Asimov considers his robot characters to be computers. Philip K. Dick is imagining this scenario that really doesn't exist in our understanding of computers and robotics just yet. The idea of creating, because replicants aren't robots. Replicants are biological humans that have just been created artificially.
Right.
So it's like we aren't really designing the intelligence of replicants. We're creating these biological entities. Really, it's just like it's birth with extra steps, making a replicant. Making a robot in Isaac Asimov's world is very much creating a machine, putting a computer into it, you know, and it all runs on ones and zeros. But the replicants in Philip K. Dick's world, they're actually human beings. You know, they just were created in a lab, you know. They were created to be slaves. So it's like, yeah, they're artificially created, but you artificially created a human being, you know. You didn't artificially create like a robot. You artificially created a person. Like basically, it's if you could do birth in a lab, that's what you just did. You know, doesn't that person deserve all the rights of a human? You know, so that's one of the real problems with comparing and contrasting Philip K. Dick and Isaac Asimov is like, and it's one of the reasons why I get pissed off when people are talking about the robots are going to take over and shit. It's like, if you really read Asimov, he's not saying the robots are going to take over. Right. You know, because robots they're computers. They don't get to make their own decisions, you know? Even at the end of that book, when you've got robots that look exactly like people, they're still people, or they're still robots. They still have to go by the rules of their computer. Right. Just because they're indistinguishable from people doesn't make them people. Right. Whereas Philip K. Dick,
I see.
He's making actual people.
Right.
You know, it's like I said, Philip K. Dick, brilliant writer, terrible scientist. You know, I don't know if we're ever going to really deal with the issues of Blade Runner in real life. I don't know if we're ever going to be that good at creating genetically engineering people. I don't know if we're ever going to get to that point. You know, I don't know if it's really a question that's worth asking, because I don't know if it's possible. Asimov's books, that shit's possible. Yeah. That shit could happen in our lifetime. Right. You know, definitely want the rules of robotics from Asimov's side of things, but I don't know if Blade Runner is ever going to happen for real, you know?
I never even thought about it like that. I don't know, like, Oh man, I didn't. Okay, so like I get that like Asimov's like hard science or hard science fiction, and then Philip K. Dick's more soft science fiction. But like I didn't really connect that like that was that they were basically. I mean, they're basically humans. The replicants are. They are human. They're human biological life.
Yeah, you can't tell the difference between a replicant and a human being without a serious battery of psychological tests. That's the only way you can tell the difference. Did you ever see Westworld, like the original Westworld, the movie?
Wait, no, I didn't.
Okay, so I don't know. I haven't seen the TV show, so I don't know how it works with the TV show. But back in the day, original Westworld, the only way you could tell the difference between the animatronic robots and the humans was the hands. Like that was sort of this bit of a joke. Was like they could replicate everything perfectly on a human being except for the hands. They just couldn't quite get the hands right. So if you looked at a person's hands, you could tell if they were a robot or not.
Right.
You know, that's the kind of shit that it takes to tell the difference between a human and a machine. You know, in Isaac Asimov, in iRobot, they were actually trying to figure out if this one politician dude was a robot, and they put him through all of these crazy tests, and you know, it came down to they were like, can he eat an apple? You know, can he? And then he ate the apple, and they were like, oh, he must not be a robot. And then someone was like, well, actually, you can fake that too. You know, but it was like the tests they were doing to figure out if he was a robot were really, really simple. To test if someone's a replicant or not, you've got to deep dive into their psyche to figure out if they were artificially created or biologically created.
Because the DNA is identical.
Basic, you know, well, identical is a relative term or whatever, but yeah, like you're using human DNA to create this artificial life. You know, so
interesting.
It's a series of ethical questions that I feel like like I said, I don't think they really need to be asked, but they're fun to ask.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
They're fun to debate back and forth. Because that's what it comes down to is like once you create an artificial human life, who gets to determine the rules for that life? You know, because we made these replicants, we made them too strong, and we built them for manual labor, right? And so we have to protect ourselves from that replicant. Pretty easy. Right. You put a cap on their life. This one's going to die in 4 years.
Right.
So that way I know it's never going to get smart enough to rise up and rebel, right?
Right.
Well, is that fair? You know? It's kind of what I love about the new Blade Runner is that they decided to take the same question and try and apply it to parenthood, you know? And I think that's I don't know if Philip K. Dick meant for this or Ridley Scott meant for this, but you can kind of look at Blade Runner as a metaphor for parenting or for, you know, raising children anyway as a teacher or, you know, a fun uncle or whatever.
Right.
You can look at it as being a parent raising a child because you are responsible for that kid, right?
Right.
But you have to let that kid make his own mistakes, her own mistakes. You have to let the kid have agency over themselves. And the kid's going to fuck up. And you can't just step in and say, no, I'm smarter than you. You can't do anything now. Right?
Right. Because it defeats the purpose.
Yeah, you can't just control the kid, even though your job is to control the kid. And so there's kind of this interesting metaphor with the same thing with replicants of we've created the replicants. We have to control the replicants because they're our responsibility. But we made them and created them with sentience and life. They have a certain right to personal agency. So where do you draw that line? You know? So I think it's really interesting that we start off the new Blade Runner. He finds Drax out in the desert, right?
Yeah.
And, which was the best part of the movie for me and the girlfriend,
Phenomenal.
by the way. We're like, that's the autistic guy from Guardians of the Galaxy. And so finds him in the desert, and the first thing he says is he's like, you've never seen a miracle or something like that, right? And like that's the whole question that Ryan Gosling keeps coming back to is you've never seen a miracle, you've never seen a miracle. And he finds what's her name in a shallow grave, girl from the first movie, I can't remember. Rachel, yes. Finds her in a shallow grave, finds out she was pregnant.
Right.
It's like, oh my God, replicant, and she was pregnant. So like this is the whole thing is like trying to figure out how the hell did a replicant get pregnant?
Right.
That just fascinates me, man. because like if the replicant can make a baby replicant, that proves that they have the capability of taking care of themselves.
Right.
If they can take care of babies, they can take care of themselves. And that throws away the whole paradigm that the Blade Runner concept was built on. It's like, we have to take care of the replicants because we're the replicant parents.
Right.
The replicants can't take care of themselves. Well, this replicant just had a baby. So this replicant is now a replicant parent, which means the replicant can parent himself, which means you don't with the Blade Runners. It's just... this is what I'm talking about. Like, threw everything out of the loop for me, you know.
Interesting. Okay. So, all right. So this idea of like self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
I like. Oh man, that's a really interesting perspective. I like that. Okay. So, all right, going deeper on that.
Yeah.
What? So for K, what is his like litmus test for self-sufficiency?
That's Ryan Gosling, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, what's his litmus test for?
Yeah, for like self-sufficiency and becoming like his own person. Like, at what point in the movie do you think that he really becomes more than just a replicant, or at least elevates the idea of replicant beyond subhuman to a level of like human?
I don't know, man. That's a really good question. I don't know if he ever, for me, I don't know if he ever really crosses that threshold.
Interesting.
You know, I mean, he crosses thresholds in several ways, but I don't know if he ever truly hits the point of being like a human, because he's a Nexus, 8, 9, something like that. I can't remember. I think the old movie was Nexus 5.
Right.
And now we're up to Generation 8.
8, yeah, I think it was 8.
So, like, he's gone through at least 3 more generations of trying to be controlled, right? And, like, they've worked through his psychology, and, like, he's a meat puppet, right?
Right.
He was born without this consciousness, in a way. For him, like, the real turn for him, I think, comes when he goes and he talks to the girl in the bubble.
Right.
And she's like, and let's, you know, so if we talked about spoilers on this yet, because
we can spoil.
We're about to spoil the shit. It's like a year out or whatever, but you know,
year.
It's like we haven't really spoiled anything yet. But now I think I'm going to start to spoil some stuff. He goes and talks to the girl in the bubble, right?
Right.
And she's like, she's the one who creates all of the memories for the replicants.
Right.
And Ryan Gosling knows that he's a replicant, and he knows that there are memories in his mind, and he knows that they're fake. He's like at this extra level of understanding of himself. It's really weird to watch, because he knows that he's a fake person, but needs to pretend he's a real person to fully become a fake person.
Right.
It's
a lot of layers there.
Yeah. And he understands all of it. He's just like, okay, I know I got these memories because I kind of need them, but they're not real. I'm only 4 years old. And so he's like talking to this girl, and she's creating memories in front of him, and she's saying, you know, this is how I create the memories. And he's like, well, do you ever just take real memories and just put them in there? And she says, well, you know, sometimes, kind of, you know, but the fake ones are so much better, you know, but, you know, every so often a real one kind of slips in or something like that. And he says, all right, I'm going to take this memory out of my head. I want you to tell me if it's a real memory, because he's starting to think that he's the replicant baby, right?
Right.
And she pulls it out, she looks at it, and she's like, oh my God, yeah, it's a real memory. Which, of course, by this point in the movie, you're like, we know that was a real memory.
Right.
And he has this big freak out moment. He's like, what the fuck? I can't believe it. Ryan Gosling gets to a point where he can start questioning his own, or Kay, I should say. Kay gets to this point where he can start questioning like his own humanity, his own consciousness.
Right.
But I don't think he ever, because his whole thing is just, I knew who I was, and now I'm being presented with this question of who I am. You know, I'm getting this new information that's making me think I'm not who I thought I was. You know, and now what's this existential crisis gonna mean for me? Because my job is to go off and kill me, right?
That's a good point.
Because the baby is the target, and if he's the baby, he's gonna have to get killed,
right.
Which means he's gonna have to lie to his boss because he's not gonna kill himself. And you know, if he has to question who he is, it questions his whole moral code. You know, so it's not for him. I don't think it's so much this problem of he slowly becomes a full human being and becomes like able to make his own decisions or something like that. Right. For him, it's more just, for him, what I'm seeing in him is more the contradiction in the robotics laws in Isaac Asimov's work.
Okay.
The first story in iRobot, I think they're on Mars, and there's a robot who's running in a circle around this crater that's spewing sulfur, and he's singing bar tunes. He's singing, "Oh, Danny Boy," and they're like, "What the fuck is this robot doing, singing Danny Boy, going back and forth?" And it turns out, like, the first law of robotics is don't hurt a person.
Right.
The second law of robotics is don't hurt yourself, or something like that. And they're like, okay, he needs to go get the sulfur shit out of the crater to help us. But if he gets too close to the crater, he's going to melt. So what he's doing is he's going to the crater, realizing he's hurting himself, coming back to us, realizing he's hurting us, going back to the crater, realizing he's hurting himself, and going back and forth, and it's basically making him drunk. And he's going back,
right.
and he's confused. And he doesn't know how to consolidate these two totally opposing ideas. And that's what I'm seeing in Ryan Gosling in that scene where he's like, I have a job to do, but if I do that job, it means I stop existing. And if I stop existing, I can't do my job anymore.
Right.
So he just doesn't know how to reconcile the information that's being given to him. He doesn't have the capabilities to logically figure out the truth of his situation. If at any point in that movie, someone just came to Ryan Gosling and said, hey, you've got a real memory in your head, but it's not your memory, you are actually a replicant, he would just be like, oh, okay, cool, click, click, blam, and just kill Harrison Ford,
right.
kill the girl in the bubble,
right.
And just move on with his life. I don't think he ever really, like, he's still got that same job to do, That's my feeling on it. I've seen it once. I've seen Blade Runner 1,000 times. I can talk a little bit more, but like Blade Runner, the new one, I've seen it once. Maybe there's a point in that movie where he turns around and it's like, oh, he's really human now. I personally didn't see it,
See, I always thought that existential crisis moment, that was where he it transcended to humanity. That's how I viewed. I don't know. Like, that's just how I think about like my own human experience.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, right? Is like, it looks like human.
Right.
It really looks human when he has that moment of panic. I don't think it's truly a moment of panic, though. But I mean, you're also talking to a guy who really subscribes to the Isaac Asimov school of thought.
Okay.
When it comes to robotics and stuff like that, I got a very straightforward, logical, scientific approach to the whole robotics thing. And I really, I see a guy like Ryan Gosling freaking out in that moment. I'm just like, that's just a computer bug, So like, I really do, like, it looks human. It's not really human though. It's my feeling on the matter anyway. And that's the whole question. Like, it's like, does it just, how human does it have to be before it's actually human? Right?
Right.
We talked about this before. Like, the Voight-Kampff test, you got to deep dive on someone's psyche to really tell the difference between a replicant and a human being. Well, how far do you have to draw that damn line? It's like, if I've got to sit there and talk to you for 30 minutes and monitor your pupils and ask you all these questions, like, does it really matter if you were created in a lab at this point? You're so indistinguishable from a human being. And when Gosling has that freak out in the dreamatorium, and he's like, he's able to question his own existence. He's able to make this existential debate in his own mind.
Right.
Like, yeah, is that enough to make you human? I kind of think no, because I think Ryan Gosling would still go out and kill people if you just laid the question to bed for him. I don't think he would really have an ethical debate on it, but it's like, where do you draw the line with human? That's the whole point of the movie, right? Is like, you got to go so deep to figure out if this is even a human being. So why don't you just call it a human and go home?
So for you, is it ethics then? That's kind of the line for you. Like, if someone like has an ethical
ethics, yeah, I would clarify it to mean to be conscience, though.
Okay.
Not so much just ethics as can you make your own decisions about your life?
Right. Okay.
Ryan Gosling's character he's working from a script. His mind has been pre-programmed to work as a Blade Runner, full stop. Right. And he isn't questioning what he's doing because he has a question about the thing itself. He's questioning what he's doing because he's starting to question the programming itself. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
So for me, that's not good enough. For me, that's like he doesn't shoot Drax in the head or whatever and then go, was that okay? You know?
Right.
Like he just realizes that he could have been lied to about who he is. And that's what makes him start to question whether or not what he's doing is okay. You know, I don't know. I feel it's a pedantic kind of reason or whatever, and like I shouldn't be a judge in like a court system because I get to thinking too much about little nitpicky shit like that. But you know, no, for me, man, like it's just not enough. Like I said, for me, what I'm seeing in Gosling's character is just it's just this logical fallacy that he can't comprehend. That's the thing he's freaking out about.
Right.
It's not about the morals of his life. You know, it's not like he saw Drax's kid out in the street and she was like, "Where's my daddy? He's dead." We were in another movie. Like Ryan Gosling wasn't like, "Oh, what I did had an effect on another human being."
Right.
That's not what he was doing. He's freaking out because he doesn't understand where he came from now. You know, because he's realizing he was lied to. But the truth is, he wasn't lied to. You know, he picked up this lie. He sort of invented this lie through his investigation, you know? So yeah, for me, it's not a good enough, not a good enough reason. Like,
even by that moment at the end of the film where he's like, I don't know, he's like laying in the snow, and I believe that's after he was told that he's not the child.
Yeah.
I believe that was after. And then, I don't know, it was just.
I'm having trouble recalling the scene exactly. He's laying in the snow.
He's like outside of the dream place, the memory place.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember exactly what he was like, why he was there, but I just the way that they shot that scene and kind of the expression on his face, I just for some reason it swayed me.
Yeah.
I was certain by the end that he's human. He's human now. Like right at the end, he's.
Well, that's it. Like I said, I've seen it the once, so like there might be more stuff, but like I'd have to go back and see the ending of the movie again to really, you know, maybe, yeah. Like I don't really remember too well. All I'm really talking about is that one moment in the memory bubble where
right.
he's like freaking out, and like that's the first threshold he crosses.
Okay, yeah.
You know, so yeah, for me, when it got to the end of the movie, I wasn't fully convinced that Gosling's character was fully human.
Okay.
I definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
But I also wasn't convinced that Deckard was a replicant until like my 50th viewing of Blade Runner, you know? So,
okay.
And then once I figured that out, I was dead set for sure. Like he's definitely a replicant. I mean, can we talk about that actually? Cause you know what? That's one of the most brilliant turns in a lot of ways. Cause like were you of the mind that Deckard was a replicant from the original movie?
Yes.
I think most serious fans of Blade Runner, we come to that conclusion. Like that's kind of you're pushed into believing that by the end of the movie,
right?
And the point of you believing that, right, is that you can't fucking tell the difference,
right?
You know, so to confirm in the new one that Deckard is definitely not a replicant, I think drives the point home for the original movie better than anything could possibly drive it home. Because we all sat around for the past 30 years going, "Homeboy's a replicant,"
right?
Like we've been certain of it our entire lives. Then the new movie comes out, nope, he's not. Well, there you go. There's your whole thing, man. Replicants are fucking human. That's it. That's all that matters. Like, just
exactly.
get over
if
it.
We can believe that a human is a replicant.
If you can be convinced that a non-replicant is a replicant, right. You know, it's kind of a reverse Turing test in a lot of ways, you know?
Interesting.
And for the people who Turing test is the one where if you can't tell the difference between a human being and an artificial computer,
right.
As you're talking in a terminal, then that artificial intelligence is basically a human being.
Right.
You know, that's the basic Turing test. So this is a reverse Turing test. If you can convince someone that a human is a computer, the computers are basically human. You know?
Oh man.
But it's more complicated than that, right?
I think so because
like I don't want Ryan Gosling to vote, you know?
You don't think he's qualified?
No, man. Like, I don't want him to own land and shit. Like, no, I don't think he should have full rights of a human being. I really don't. You know, and I mean that because he's clear, like he's been his head's been fucked with by science. And I just said a second ago that like I believe in science, I got a scientific mind and everything. Well, sometimes fuck science, okay? Because sometimes science takes it too far, and like this is a situation. No, I don't think that character should have like the full rights of a human being and should be like treated as a human being in society, because like the rules for him are different because he is built differently.
Literally built differently.
Yeah. Now the Nexus 5s on the other hand, you know,
clearly a little bit
that's like those ones hadn't been fucked with by science so much. Those people should have been treated like people, you know, because they basically were made as people and then put into a situation where they were expected to behave as machines, you know. We made people to be machines. Like that was fucked up. That was wrong. By the time we get to Ryan Gosling's generation, it's still wrong, in my opinion, to be making people to act as machines. But I also think it's just Gosling's dumb luck that he doesn't get to get the full rights of a human being. You know, like, it's sorry, man, you were born wrong. I don't feel okay about that, but like, this is just the way it is. You know? So
then what do you think of the quote unquote villain of the film, Wallace, the blind man who's making, like, he has redefined.
Oh, Jared Leto?
Yeah.
Fucking hated that character, honestly.
Really?
I didn't really appreciate his presence in the movie.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't like Jared Leto much anymore, man.
Fair
I'm kind of like, I loved Leto back in the day. I loved him in Fight Club. I loved him in what was that Lord of War movie? Loved him in was he in Requiem for a Dream?
Yes.
Was that him? Yeah. That's fucking loved him in that.
Right.
Loved him in 30 Seconds to Mars, man. But there's something about post 2008 Jared Leto that just ain't right for me. I
get it.
I don't know what happened, but I didn't like him in Suicide Squad. Yeah. I didn't like him in this. No, like he's just like creepy and weird. And I'm sitting there listening to him monologuize. Yeah. And he stabs a lady in the belly, and he's talking about like, what are your rights once you've birthed and created something? What are your rights as the creator? Right. And I just kind of felt like I got the point after the first stanza of his poem, and he went on for another 300 pages.
I get it.
I fucking hated him. But, you know, you're also supposed to hate him in that movie. Like, he's like, I think the point that they're trying to get to here is like, it's wrong to create something and then expect to be able to control it. You know? I feel like that's what they're saying. Like, if you're going to create something, you have to have love for it for what it is, and you have to allow it to have a life on its own. I mean, personally, I think that's true of anything you create, whether it's a human life or even just a fucking poster on your wall. You know, like once you create something, put it out into the world, you got to let it have its own life. Right. You know, and basically what Leto's character is saying is, I created you. I own you now, you know? Right. And it's one of those, I really feel like they could have just said it in one shot, where he walks up to he creates the woman, right? Right. And he stabs her in the belly and smears his blood all over his face and goes, okay, bring me another one. Like, you could just show me how fucked up this guy is, right? That's true. And it would have been a lot more effective. I didn't like the monologue. I
understand.
I feel like Leto just kind of improvised the whole monologue.
I really believe that. I really do, because that's just kind of his MO now, right?
Yeah, totally. It's like, I feel like the director was just sitting there behind the camera going, okay, and stab her, okay, and okay, stop. Wait, he's still talking. Just stab her. Just go. Just stab her. Why isn't he stabbing her? And then he just talks for another 8 minutes, and the director's like, I guess we got to use all of it. He's Jared Leto.
That sounds like something that actually could have happened. Oh my gosh.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. Like, you know, so I mean, did you have a more specific question? I've kind of just gone off on a rant against Jared Leto, but you had a question about this guy.
Actually, you got me thinking about kind of like a faith parallel.
Yeah.
Because he describes the replicants as like his children in like a biblical sense. Yeah. And like, he thinks Joy is his angel. Like, it's like super like, the guy, he's very clearly very religious. Like, I don't know. That's the vibe I got from him, at least. Right. Do you think there's like a religious parallel there? Like, that
definitely.
Like he's meant to be like standing for like a God figure?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's And I think it's also very telling that they're showing this as the wrong way to think of yourself as a creator. Because if you read the Bible, even God chilled out, right? Even God was like, I can't really be God anymore. I gotta be like chill God. And then in the sequel, he's a lot more backseat, right? So Old Testament God is very hands-on.
Right.
And Old Testament, no one likes Old Testament God, like there's no faith on the planet that's just like, the God who was killing everybody, that's our God, Even the Jews who don't have the New Testament, they're kind of like, but give God a break. You got Noah's Ark, you got Sodom and Gomorrah. Right. Hell, just the Garden of Eden. The book starts off with a very micromanagey kind of God. Mm-hmm. And he makes Adam and Eve, and he says, okay, you can, but not that tree. This is very specific. Can't do that. You fucked with the tree. Why'd you fuck with the tree? Get out of here. Put on fig leaves. Just boots him out. So by the time you get to the New Testament, God has a much more gentle hand. Right. And now you have God represented through Jesus Christ.
Right.
And Christ's whole mission is just to teach people how to behave. The whole idea of Christianity is behave the way Christ would have behaved.
Right.
There isn't even really, in the New Testament, there isn't even really a whole lot of repercussions for not acting the way Christ acted. Like,
that's true.
The concept of hell is kind of gone in a lot of ways. The concept of vengeful God is kind of gone. Like, it's there, but it's not nearly as important.
Right.
And, the whole idea is just like, hey, here's a good way to act, but do whatever the fuck you want. Like, you can do what you have free will. Like, just do your thing. And God, the whole book of the New Testament, God is pretty much on an easy chair in heaven watching the game. And it's only like, God only shows up when someone dials up God. Jesus goes out into the desert, and he's like, why have you forsaken me? And God is like, oh, you woke me up, man. I was taking a nap. And then they talk for a while in the desert, right? Or wait, was it the devil he talked to in the desert? But anyway, I don't remember. But the point is, like, God only shows up in the New Testament when someone asks him to show up.
Right.
And like, that's the way you govern your creation. That's the ultimate lesson of the New Testament is, you create something, you give it some rules, and you let it do what it's going to do, And maybe there are consequences for those rules or whatever, but like Leto in Blade Runner is very much Old Testament God.
Okay, so I have a leap to make real quick.
I just went from Blade Runner to the Bible, so you can leap however the fuck you want to leap.
So if Leto is Old Testament God,
yeah,
could Deckard be New Testament God? Because
absolutely. That's completely.
He found him in the desert.
Harrison Ford is Jesus Christ. We went there. Yes, Harrison Ford is absolutely, because where does he? Yeah, he disappears. He goes off, as Christ did for like 12 years,
right?
And then comes back later on with his advice. Like absolutely, Harrison Ford could be like the New Testament God.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. It's a kind of pattern that shows up in literature a lot. This idea of there are two different kinds of mentors in any story. Like there's the super oppressive one who wants you to act exactly the way you need to act,
right.
And then there's the dude off on Dagobah who has he has some ideas, and if you come to him, he'll give them to you, but only if you've earned it and only if you're ready.
Man.
And but he's not going to push it on you. He's going to wait for you to come to him. And that's totally, Deckard is completely the Yoda in this situation.
Right.
And yeah, Leto is Old Testament God throwing lightning bolts and shit, So it's less a Bible parallel so much as just it's a literary pattern that shows up, but it can absolutely be demonstrated through Old Testament, New Testament,
Interesting. Okay.
And I do think it's, I think that they illustrated that pretty well with Jared Leto. They just over illustrated it, and the guy creeps me out.
Yeah, he's a creepy dude. He's ceaselessly creepy. It's insane.
He's professionally creepy, man.
Yes. I didn't hear about him doing any creepy things like on the Blade Runner set, but obviously everyone's heard about the Suicide Squad thing.
Oh my God, what the hell is wrong with that guy? Didn't he send the Harley Quinn lady like a mannequin with a knife stabbed in his head or some shit like that? I think so,
yeah. And like there were like some dead animals involved at some point with some of the cast. Anyway, Jared Leto, chill out, man. You really gotta bring it down a couple notches.
I think he's hit a point in his career where he's just like, I can go weird with it. Like he's notched out who he's going to be in the industry.
Yeah.
He's not getting any bigger. He's not going anywhere. And he can just get weird with it and still keep getting work. So like, why the fuck not? You know?
It's an interesting strategy.
Yeah, it's like I don't really blame him. Like the guy's got to have made his money by now.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Like he doesn't seem like a dumb guy. I'm sure he's invested. I'm sure he's basically semi-retired at this point. Maybe he's waiting for Hollywood to throw him out or something. I don't know, man.
Maybe he's just trying to get pushed out. Yeah,
maybe that's what. Maybe he's just like, how far do I have to go? Like, I think they're gonna let me keep working after the Suicide Squad thing. Are you serious? Fuck it, I'm gonna monologue for 10 minutes of Blade Runner. I'm still talking. I'm still working. I can't believe I'm still working. Let me stab this bitch. I still got a job. Look at me.
Exactly.
There's definitely something powerful about that, right? There's definitely something empowering about just being the guy who can walk into the room like with no pants and just work, you know, like just be fucked up and still continue, you know? So I can't say I don't respect Jared Leto, but I also do hate him. That's definitely, I think, where I'm going at here.
That's understandable.
He should wear pants.
Yeah, he definitely should not Winnie the Pooh it, you know. That's a bad idea. No one should do that.
No one should Winnie the Pooh. No, definitely not.
All right.
Anyway, took a very harsh left turn off of Blade Runner. What were we talking about? Are we still talking about Blade Runner?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think those are all the thoughts I've had recently about Blade Runner, at least. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you have any big takeaways from the film as far as like, this is just how I think about film, how to live your life based on like this, like any like moral, I mean, obviously there's some moral aspects, but
yeah,
like what's the right way to live based on this film's interpretation of what's the right way to live?
Gotcha. I mean, like for me personally, I hit a point in my life somewhere in my very late 20s where I was just like, I'm going to stop learning lessons. I'm just going to be who I am.
Okay.
You know, but I know what you mean. Like I used to, when I was younger, search for meaning in movies all the time. And I mean, I guess if I were going to take something away from Blade Runner, it's definitely that creation lesson. I believe firmly that the thing that separates humankind from animals, from all other life, is the ability to create. We can create. No other creature on the planet, in the universe, in existence, can do that. And it's as simple as, I mean, last night I didn't have what I needed to make spaghetti, but I had some stuff that could kind of make spaghetti. So I put it together and I made spaghetti. It wasn't as good as regular spaghetti.
But it was spaghetti.
And like that, every single day, in a dozen different ways, you create, you know, as a human being. And I mean, I don't care if it's just doodling dicks on the dry erase board at work. I don't care if it's taking a really big shit that comes above the waterline and saying, hey, you guys got to look at this. Like, people create. That's what we do. And I think it's really, 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 really important that you understand that we create not for ourselves. We create for the world, you know? I got into a fight with a guy online. I'm not going to say his name, but he's a guy, and he's kind of a BFD. Like he's written some big movies and stuff. And I was going off on a rant about George Lucas around the time the new Star Wars came out, the first new Star Wars came out. And Lucas had this Charlie Rose interview where he was saying, I just wanted to make my movie, but Disney wanted to make something for the fans. And I went on a rant, and I was like, dude, you can't do that. And this guy hopped on there, and he was like, I don't know what you're trying to say here, but you know, this is one of your take on this is the most disturbing take I've ever heard on creation and artistic license or authorial intent. And first I apologized because I know that this guy works kind of in the same sphere as Lucas. Like he's making movies that people are actually watching. And I said, but at the same time, man, like you wrote your movie, good for you, but then you gave it to me. You know, I paid my $7 to have part of that movie because you made it for me, you know, And I appreciate that, but dude, you got to appreciate it too. You've got to sit here. You've got to realize that you make things for the world. And once it gets out, you don't own it anymore.
Right.
Like the people own it because that's just the way it is. This isn't like some weird Marxist socialist rant or some shit. Like, I'm a fucking capitalist. I own my own business and shit. Like, I don't want you to, I want to pay less taxes, but this is just the nature of creation. It's created for other people. And I said this especially about Star Wars. I said it a couple times on my show about Star Wars. It's like, George Lucas sold me Star Wars one toy at a time. Right. Not because I gave him money, but because he invited me into his world. He invited me into the world of Star Wars to play and to continue creating the world of Star Wars, because he shared it with me. Once you share something you create, the people who share it own it,
Right. I completely agree.
And that's just a part of, it's part of the pain and the of being a creator and of creating things. Like, it hurts sometimes to watch what your creation becomes. It hurts. You create a child, that kid could grow up to be a murderer or some shit, and like, that's gonna hurt. Right. Your kid might just be 12 years old and a punk and saying, I hate you. That's gonna hurt. Right. But you have to let your creation be its creation. And that's true all the way from your child to Star Wars to your dick doodle. Because your boss is gonna walk into the break room and see your dick doodle and say, see me in my office. And you're gonna have to deal with that too, because you didn't just create that dick for yourself. You created it for the public, And you've got to honor that.
Wow.
So that's what I take away from Blade Runner.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, thank you so much for coming on and talking about Blade Runner. One of my favorite films.
Yeah.
Both the first and the second one.
I got to go back and watch the second one again because clearly I missed some stuff about Ryan Gosling in there. I'm going to watch it without my girlfriend this time so she doesn't go ooh and ah over Ryan Gosling the entire time.
All right. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So next time we're probably going to, Trajan will be back and we'll probably be talking about what we have coming up and maybe some new formats. So stay tuned, guys, and thanks for listening. Bye.